The sky above the capital city of Zephyria was clear and calm, its twin suns shining brightly over the crystal towers of the Empress's palace. The air shimmered with heat, and the usual hum of airships and transport vehicles filled the atmosphere. Inside the palace, the alien Empress, Solara, stood tall on her balcony, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. She wore her ceremonial robes, decorated with silver threads that glimmered like starlight, and her crown, a delicate lattice of sapphire and gold, rested lightly on her head. Solara was known across the galaxy for her wisdom and fairness. Her people loved her for her intelligence and courage, and even her enemies respected her. Today, however, she felt a strange unease in her chest, an instinct she could not ignore. Something was wrong. The first warning came as a distant hum, low and metallic, almost like the sound of many machines moving in perfect rhythm. At first, the guards dismissed it as routine transport vessels, but Solara's instincts told her otherwise. She turned, her gaze sharp, and saw the outer city walls flashing with sudden explosions. "Guards, to your posts," she commanded, her voice steady, though her heart raced. The elite guards of the palace moved swiftly, their sleek armor catching the sunlight as they drew their plasma blades and energy shields. They had trained for years to protect the Empress, to defend the palace against invaders, and they prided themselves on their discipline. Yet even their confident movements betrayed a hint of doubt. Something about this attack was different. The first wave of enemy ships descended from the sky, sleek and black, moving with frightening speed. The palace shields flared as energy beams collided with the protective barrier, sending sparks flying and shaking the ground beneath them. Sirens blared, echoing through the marble halls. The Empress's advisors rushed to her side, their faces pale. "Your Majesty," one whispered, "they are stronger than we expected. The palace cannot hold for long." Solara's gaze shifted to the human soldier standing among the guards. Marcus, as he was called, had come with the diplomatic team from Earth. Unlike the alien guards, he wore a simple armored suit designed for protection, but not elegance. His movements were precise, his eyes calm. While others panicked, Marcus stood firm, scanning the battlefield, assessing every threat, calculating his next move. "Stay close to me," Solara instructed him, almost instinctively. "I trust your judgment." Marcus nodded once, his expression unreadable. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said simply. The next wave of attackers struck with brutal force. The palace walls shook as the enemy fired their energy cannons. The elite guards, who had always stood proudly by the Empress's side, hesitated. Some faltered, while others retreated to safer positions. Panic began to spread like wildfire among them. "Hold the line," Solara shouted, but even her voice could not stop the tide of fear. It was then that the first breach occurred. A section of the outer wall collapsed under the relentless assault, sending debris flying into the courtyard. Guards screamed as they were thrown off balance, and some ran in every direction, abandoning their posts. The Empress's heart sank. She had never seen such fear in her soldiers before. Marcus acted without hesitation. He grabbed Solara and pulled her behind a collapsed pillar, shielding her from the falling rubble. A pulse beam from the enemy ships struck close by, and sparks danced around them. Marcus's quick reflexes saved both their lives. "Follow me," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "We can move through the service corridors. They'll be safer." Solara nodded, trusting him completely. She had seen many battles in her life, but she had never witnessed such courage from a human. His presence brought a strange sense of reassurance amidst the chaos, as they navigated the maze of hidden passages. The sounds of destruction echoed above them. Explosions, screams, and the hum of energy weapons created a terrifying symphony. Solara clutched the railings tightly, feeling the vibrations of each strike against the palace. Marcus moved ahead, checking every corner, scanning for enemies, and ensuring that their path remained clear. "Are we safe yet?" she asked, though she knew the answer. "For now," Marcus replied, "but we need to keep moving. They'll follow us." They emerged into a hidden courtyard, one that had not yet been touched by the invasion. The moonlight reflected off the crystal fountains, creating patterns of light on the marble floor. Solara allowed herself a moment to breathe, her mind racing. Her palace, the symbol of her rule and her people's pride, was being destroyed, and her guards had abandoned her. Yet, one human soldier remained by her side. The sound of footsteps made them both tense. From the shadows emerged a group of enemy soldiers, their armor black and menacing, their eyes glowing with red light. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation, drawing his weapon. It was unlike the plasma blades of the alien guards. It was compact, precise, and lethal. "You will not harm her," he said firmly. The enemy advanced, confident in their numbers. But Marcus's skill was unmatched. With careful, calculated movements, he disabled the first attackers, using both strategy and speed. Each strike was efficient, conserving energy and avoiding unnecessary risk to Solara. The Empress watched in awe. She had trained in combat and strategy her entire life. But Marcus's human techniques were different, unpredictable, and highly effective. Her fear began to transform into admiration. "Your bravery, it's unlike anything I've seen," she whispered. Though there was little time for words, Marcus glanced back at her, his expression serious. "Bravery means nothing if we don't protect what matters. You are more than your title. Your life is worth every risk." They fought their way through the courtyard, moving from shadow to shadow, until they reached a small service elevator that led to the lower levels of the palace. Here, they paused. The sounds of destruction above were deafening, and the Empress's guards were nowhere to be seen. "They've all left," Solara said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Every one of them." Marcus looked at her, unshaken. "Courage doesn't always come from numbers. Sometimes it comes from standing firm when everyone else runs. You have that courage, Your Majesty." "So do I." Solara studied him for a moment. He was calm, composed, and fearless in the face of danger. She realized that the survival of her reign might depend not on her own soldiers, but on the loyalty of this one human. The elevator descended slowly, taking them into the lower levels. Here the palace was older, less luxurious, but sturdier. The walls were thick, and the passages twisted in ways that would confuse any enemy unfamiliar with the palace's layout. Marcus led the way, opening hidden doors and checking for traps. Solara followed, her trust in him growing with each step. As they moved deeper, Marcus paused at a junction. "We need to decide our next move," he said. "We can either attempt to regroup with the Loyalists or find a secure location to plan a counterattack." Solara considered her options. The palace was partially destroyed, and her army was scattered. Yet, she knew that giving up was not an option. "We find the Loyalists," she decided. "We will not let them think that I am powerless." Marcus nodded. "Then we move carefully. They won't expect humans to be involved in palace defense. We can use that advantage." Together, they continued through the twisting corridors, avoiding patrols and taking the path that offered both safety and speed. Along the way, Solara began to learn from Marcus's tactics. Observing his methods and realizing that human ingenuity could be as valuable as alien strength, suddenly, a sound echoed behind them, a heavy thud followed by a metallic scrape. Marcus spun, weapon raised, and Solara instinctively ducked behind him. A lone enemy scout had discovered their path. Marcus moved with lightning speed, disabling the scout before it could raise an alarm. Solara's heart pounded, but she did not falter. She realized that survival required more than fear. It required focus, courage, and trust in those who stood by her, after what felt like hours. They reached a secure chamber deep within the palace. Here the air was cooler, and the structure seemed untouched by the chaos above. Solara allowed herself to relax slightly, looking at Marcus with gratitude. "You've done more than I could have expected," she said softly. Marcus shook his head. "I'm just doing what needs to be done. You are the Empress. If we fail, everything falls apart. I won't let that happen." Solara felt a surge of hope. Perhaps not all was lost. Perhaps with this human soldier by her side, she could survive the attack and reclaim her throne. The palace may have fallen, and her guards may have abandoned her, but Marcus's courage reminded her that one determined individual could make all the difference. As the sounds of the battle raged above, The Empress and the human soldier prepared for the next step. They would need to move quickly, think wisely, and trust each other completely. Solara realized that this human, so different from anyone she had known, could be the key to saving her people and restoring order to her empire. For now. Though they rested briefly, gathering strength and planning their next move. Outside, the city burned, and the invaders celebrated their initial victory. But deep inside the palace, hope flickered. One human soldier had stayed when everyone else ran, and that alone was enough to change the course of history. Solara looked at Marcus once more. "We will not fail," she said firmly. Marcus gave a small nod, his eyes steady. "No, we will succeed together." The secure chamber deep within the palace provided a moment of calm, but the sounds of battle still echoed through the walls. Outside, explosions and shouts reminded Solara that her people were under attack. She sat on a low marble bench, her mind racing, and watched Marcus carefully inspect the room for hidden exits and potential threats. "Are you sure we can get out safely?" Solara asked, her voice steady but tinged with worry. Marcus shook his head slightly. "There's no guarantee, Your Majesty. But we have a better chance if we move quickly and stay smart. I've studied the palace layout, and I know a few hidden paths that will help us avoid most of the invaders." Solara nodded. She trusted him completely. While her own guards had fled in fear, this human soldier had stayed. His courage and determination impressed her more than words could say. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, strong, clever, and unwavering. "Lead the way," she said. Marcus took the lead, moving with careful precision. The passageways were narrow and winding, lit only by faint strips of emergency light. Solara followed closely, her senses alert to every sound and shadow. Every corner could hide an enemy scout or a trap. They reached a junction where two paths diverged. Marcus paused, considering his options. The left path leads to the old service tunnels. It's slower, but less guarded. The right path goes through the training halls faster, but we might encounter enemy patrols. Solara trusted his judgment. "Take the left path. Safety is more important than speed." They moved into the service tunnels, and the air grew cooler and damper. Ancient pipes and conduits lined the walls, some still carrying faint energy currents. Solara shivered slightly but pressed on. Marcus moved ahead, scanning constantly for threats. Hours seemed to pass as they navigated the tunnels. Occasionally, they would hear distant voices or the sound of skittering machinery, reminding them that the invaders were everywhere. Marcus's human instincts proved invaluable. He was able to recognize subtle signs of ambush or movement that even Solara would have missed. Finally, they emerged into a small courtyard hidden from the main palace grounds. Here, the moonlight illuminated overgrown fountains and statues that had been abandoned for decades. The quiet was almost eerie, a stark contrast to the chaos above. Solara took a deep breath. "We made it this far, thanks to you," she said, looking at Marcus with gratitude. He nodded, but did not speak. Instead, he motioned for her to follow him toward a narrow exit at the far end of the courtyard. "We can't stop yet. There are loyalists in the lower city sectors. If we reach them, we can plan a counterattack and rescue those still trapped in the palace." Solara's eyes lit with determination. "Then let's go. My people cannot survive if we remain hidden." They moved cautiously through the exit and descended into the lower city. The streets were empty, the citizens having fled or hidden in fear. Fires burned in some areas, casting flickering shadows against the tall buildings. Occasionally, they saw enemy drones sweeping the streets, searching for survivors. Marcus guided Solara through alleyways and abandoned buildings, avoiding detection. At one point, they came across a small group of frightened civilians trapped in a collapsed street tunnel. Marcus acted quickly, lifting debris and helping the people to safety. Solara watched in awe as he worked tirelessly, showing not only courage but compassion. The civilians, though shaken, whispered prayers of thanks as Marcus guided them away from danger. "Humans are remarkable," Solara murmured, observing his determination. "Even in the face of overwhelming danger, they find a way to help others." Marcus glanced at her, giving a small smile. It's not about being human or alien. It's about standing for what's right, no matter the odds. After several hours of careful travel, they reached the hidden outpost where the Empress's loyalists had regrouped. It was a network of underground chambers, reinforced with strong metal walls and advanced energy shields. The loyalists, surprised to see the Empress alive, rushed to her side, bowing in respect. "Your Majesty." One of them exclaimed, "We feared the worst." "How did you escape?" Solara gestured toward Marcus. "This human soldier stayed by my side when my own guards ran. He ensured my safety and guided me here." The loyalists exchanged glances, their respect for Marcus growing. Humans were not common in this part of the galaxy, and few had seen one act with such bravery and skill. One of the commanders, a tall alien named Rinner, stepped forward. "We owe you a debt, human. Your courage has saved the Empress and our cause." Marcus nodded simply. "I'm just doing what I can. The Empress's survival is essential. Without her, your people would have no hope." Solara felt a surge of pride and gratitude. This human, so different from her own species, had proven that heroism was not limited to bloodlines or training. Marcus had shown courage, intelligence, and loyalty that surpassed even the finest of her alien guards. Over the next few hours, Solara and Marcus worked with the loyalists to plan a counterattack. They studied maps of the city and the palace, identifying weak points in the enemy's control. Marcus suggested strategies that combined human ingenuity with alien technology, surprising even the seasoned commanders. "You think like a human," Rinner commented, watching Marcus outline a plan using holographic projections. "But your ideas might just be what we need to win." Marcus smiled faintly. "Sometimes thinking differently is the only way to survive." Solara observed him carefully. She realized that his courage went beyond combat skills. He was strategic, adaptable, and unshakable in the face of fear. Her trust in him had grown stronger with each passing hour, and she knew that with Marcus by her side, they had a real chance to reclaim her palace as night fell over the city. The loyalists prepared for the coming battle. Solara moved among them, offering words of encouragement and guidance. Marcus stayed near her, quietly observing the preparations, ready to act at a moment's notice. The Empress noticed how the presence of Marcus inspired not only her, but also her followers. His calm confidence gave hope to the loyalists who had witnessed the chaos and despair of the palace's fall. She realized that leadership was not just about titles or power, it was about courage, trust, and the ability to inspire others in the darkest of times. Before dawn, Solara and Marcus reviewed the plan one last time. The strategy was simple but risky. They would infiltrate the palace through the old service tunnels, avoid the main enemy forces, and strike at the invaders' command center. Marcus had identified several weak points that could be exploited, and Solara's knowledge of the palace layout would guide them. "Are you ready?" Solara asked, looking at Marcus. He nodded, his expression calm and focused. "Always. But remember, Your Majesty, the plan can change if the situation requires it. Flexibility is as important as courage." Solara smiled faintly. "I've learned that from you, Marcus. You've taught me more in these hours than I ever expected." As the first light of dawn touched the city, Solara and Marcus led the loyalists out of the hidden outpost and toward the palace. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so, as if the city itself held its breath in anticipation. Every shadow could conceal danger, every alleyway a trap. Yet they moved forward with determination. They reached the outskirts of the palace grounds, where the ruins of walls and fallen statues marked the path of the previous battle. Marcus scanned the area carefully, noting enemy patrols and automated drones. He motioned for the group to take cover behind the rubble and wait for the right moment to move. Solara's heart pounded, but she remained composed. She trusted Marcus completely, and she knew that their combined strength, along with the loyalists, could turn the tide of the battle. After several tense minutes, Marcus signaled the group to advance. They moved quickly and silently, using shadows and debris for cover. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the palace and the invaders' command center. The tension was palpable. Solara could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Lives depended on her decisions, and the fate of her empire hung in the balance. Yet beside her, Marcus moved with unwavering confidence, a steady presence in the chaos. Finally, they reached a point where they could observe the enemy forces without being detected. Marcus pointed out the command center, heavily guarded but vulnerable if approached from the side. He outlined a plan for a small strike team to infiltrate. While the Loyalists created distractions to draw the enemy away, Solara nodded, her resolve solidifying. This is our chance. If we succeed, we reclaim the palace. If we fail... She did not finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. Failure was not an option. He placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. We won't fail. Not while we stand together. Solara felt a surge of determination. With Marcus's guidance, the courage of her loyalists, and her own experience, she believed they could overcome any obstacle. The fall of the palace was only the beginning. The fight to reclaim Atan, to prove that courage, loyalty, could overcome fear, was just starting. And as the first rays of sunlight bathed the city, Solara and Marcus prepared to strike, ready to face the enemy and reclaim what was rightfully hers. The sun had only just risen, casting long golden rays across the ruined palace walls. Smoke still curled from shattered turrets, and the once beautiful crystal towers now stood broken and cracked. But despite the destruction, there was hope. The Empress Solara stood tall beside Marcus, her loyal human protector. Behind them, her small group of loyalists waited for her command. Their armor was scratched, their energy shields barely charged, but their hearts were strong. They believed in her. They believed in him. Today, we take back what we lost, Solara said quietly. She did not shout. She did not need to. Her voice carried strength that went deeper than volume. Marcus studied the palace from their hiding place among the rubble. Enemy drones floated in the air like silent watchmen scanning the grounds. Armored soldiers guarded every entrance. But Marcus had already seen a weakness in Old Maintenance Gate on the west side, half buried beneath fallen debris. That gate, he said, pointing. The enemy thinks it's too damaged to use. But if we clear it quietly, we can enter unseen. Solara nodded. Then that is our way in. The Loyalists moved quickly, using their tools to cut and lift the rubble. Marcus worked beside them, lifting heavy pieces of broken wall with surprising strength. Solara helped too. She did not stand aside like a distant ruler. She wiped dust from her face and pulled at cracked stones with determination. Within minutes, the narrow gate stood opened, arc, and silent. Like the mouth of a hidden tunnel, Marcus stepped forward first. "Stay close to me," he said to Solara. Though she already knew he would never let anything happen to her, they moved inside. The tunnel was cold and narrow, the air heavy with dust. Every sound seemed louder in the dark, each footstep, each breath. Marcus led with his weapon raised, checking every corner. Solara followed, silent and composed. After a long walk through the dark corridors, they reached a metal doorway that led into the lower storage halls of the palace. Marcus carefully opened it, just a crack, and peered out. 2 enemy guards stood nearby, talking casually. They did not expect danger from this side. Marcus signaled the Loyalists. 2 of them moved silently, taking positions. With swift, quiet movements, they disarmed the guards without causing alarm. Solara stepped into the hall, her heart pounding. It felt strange to walk through her own palace like a hidden intruder. This place had once been filled with music, laughter, and peace. Now, it echoed only with distant alarms and enemy footsteps. They moved deeper inside, taking turns at each hallway, avoiding guards whenever possible. Marcus's human instincts proved vital. He could sense danger even before it appeared, warning the group to hide behind pillars or slip into alcoves just moments before patrols passed by. At last, they reached a large chamber overlooking the palace throne room. Solara could see it clearly from the balcony where she hid. The throne stood, tall but unoccupied. Enemy officers had set up their command station on the floor below. Holographic maps glowed around them. Soldiers moved in and out, taking orders. "This is where we strike," Marcus whispered. Lara nodded. The plan was simple. Marcus would lead a small team to disable the command station's power core, which controlled the enemy communications and drone support. Meanwhile, Solara and the remaining loyalists would descend into the throne room and reveal her presence. Once the enemy saw her alive, many would panic. Some might even surrender. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked her quietly. Solara met his eyes. "I am ready, because you are with me." They shared a brief, unspoken moment of trust. Then they separated. Marcus and two loyalists slipped away toward the side corridor. Solara stood tall, placed her crown more firmly upon her head, and signaled the others to follow. They descended the stairs into the throne room. Enemy soldiers looked up in shock. For a moment, silence filled the great hall. Then Solara spoke, not loudly, but with a calm command that echoed through every corner of the room. "I am Empress Solara," she said. "I stand before you. You invaded my home. You broke my walls, but you did not break my spirit." Some of the enemy soldiers hesitated. Others raised their weapons. But before anyone could act, the lights flickered. Marcus had reached the power core. He worked quickly, using tools he had taken from the outpost. Sparks flew. Energy surged, then dashed darkness. The entire throne room went black. Shouts of confusion erupted from the enemy ranks. Solara's loyalists activated their small portable lights, casting beams across the floor. The enemy, blinded without their helmet displays, stumbled in panic. Marcus reappeared, moving through the chaos like a shadow. He reached Solara's side. "It's done," he said. The enemy commander, furious but shaken, shouted for his soldiers to fight, but most of them hesitated. Some slowly lowered their weapons. Some dropped to their knees, realizing they stood before a ruler who had not run, who had not hidden, a ruler who returned to her throne in the darkness and stood beside, a human who had saved her. Solara stepped forward and placed her hand on the armrest of her throne. She did not sit. She stood beside it, facing her enemies. "Those who choose to surrender will be shown mercy," she declared. "Those who continue this fight will face defeat. Decide now." The room was silent. Then, one by one, enemy weapons clattered to the floor. Even the commander, his pride crumbling, bowed his head. "It is over," Marcus said softly. Solara turned to him, her expression filled with gratitude. "It is over because of you." Marcus shook his head. "It is over because you stood strong." Solara smiled, a quiet, regal smile. The loyalists cheered softly, though Solara raised her hand to calm them. She stepped toward Marcus. "You stayed when others fled," she said. "You protected me without question. Marcus of Earth, today I name you protector of the crown." The loyalists bowed their heads in agreement. Even the surrendered enemies looked at Marcus with new respect. Marcus stood still, slightly surprised. "I did what was right," he said simply. Solara nodded. "And because of that, my empire still stands." Asterisk. Days later, the palace was being rebuilt. Workers cleared rubble, engineers repaired shields, and peace slowly returned to Zephyria. Solara walked through the gardens with Marcus beside her. The trees were scorched, the fountains cracked, but the air felt alive again. "My people speak of you with great admiration," Solara said. "They call you the human who did not run." Marcus smiled slightly. "I didn't do it for fame." Solara looked at him thoughtfully. "Dumbed. I know. That is why you deserve it." They walked in silence for a moment. Birds flew overhead. Sunlight reflected off the restored walls. "Will you stay?" Solara asked softly. Marcus paused. "I will stay," he said at last. "As long as you need me." Solara's gaze softened. "Then I will never fear again." And so, the story of the Empress and the human soldier became legend across the stars. Not a tale of conquest, but of courage. Not of power, but of loyalty. Because when an empire fell, and guards ran, one human stayed.